to the gentleman from Napa, California, Mr. Thompson, and then Mr. Larson will be acknowledged right after that.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. You know, it's not often that I come down and participate in these special orders, but I got to tell you, I was in my office watching the previous speakers, and I started to get a little wheezy from the spin that they were providing from the floor, talking about what they say this bill will do. And I can tell you that there were a lot of inaccuracies in some of the things that they were trying to convince the American people that they would benefit from this. As Mr. Neal said, this vote is an important vote. This is going to be around a long time. Numerous speakers today have mentioned the fact that the last time we did major tax reform, a major tax overhaul, was over 30 years ago. So if that's any indication, we're going to be living with the consequences of this bill for a long time. And I don't think those consequences are anything to be proud of. We heard repeatedly that this bill is not going to even touch the middle, not going to help at all the wealthiest people in the country. And you just can't help but laugh. The last speaker came out and stated that this does away with the alternative minimum tax. Now, the alternative minimum tax was put in place to ensure that the wealthiest of taxpayers actually paid taxes because they were able to escape paying taxes. So that's why the alternative minimum tax came into to play. And they're the ones that pay this tax. So if you do away with it, I don't see how you can, in a straight face, say that this doesn't help wealthy Americans. Inheritance tax was talked about a lot. As a matter of fact, it was a very dishonest discussion. They kept referring to it as the death tax. We have heard this ad nauseum. We heard it in committee, we hear it on the floor, we've heard it for the past few years. This has been a very clever campaign on the other side's part to discredit the inheritance tax. If you open the codes, the tax codes, there is nothing in those codes that says the death tax. It doesn't exist. It's not real. It's made up. It's fiction. We heard some very compelling arguments about how farmers will lose their farms if they don't do away with the death tax. There's no such thing as a death tax. We heard repeatedly that after somebody dies, it's unfair to make them pay taxes. I'm here to tell you, after you die, you will never have to pay taxes. The inheritance tax refers to inherited wealth. If I inherit money from my parents, then I'm taxed on that wealth that I inherit. And there's a provision in the law that says the first 11 million don't get touched. So it's got to be a pretty huge estate before you even pay any taxes on it. And if there was all of this concern about losing the family farm, then the Republicans should have taken up my bill, a bill that I've had for a number of years with absolutely no support from the Republican side of the aisle, that says if you inherit the family farm or a family business and you continue to farm it or you continue to run the business, you were deferred from paying any inheritance tax. Now, if you inherit it and sell it and take the money and move to a beach in Hawaii, then you would pay a tax on that inherited wealth. So this is subterfuge at best. It's dishonesty at worst. The last speaker said that the American families are big winners in this bill. Well, I don't know whose American family he was talking about. Mr. Neal was right when he said the American families had a chance to be big winners if we had used this opportunity to invest in workers, invest in training, invest in community colleges, create jobs, create opportunities, build this tax reform from the middle class, the working class out. But instead, we didn't do that. We didn't even talk about it. We didn't talk about it because we didn't have a single hearing on one of the most important bills that we will cast a vote on in our time in Congress. We didn't hear from one expert witness. They dropped this bill, written in secret. As a matter of fact, many of our Republican colleagues were complaining that they didn't get a chance to see what was in the bill. They dropped this on us at the last minute. We could have worked with them. We could have addressed some of these issues. We could have figured out how to invest in the American worker. We could have figured out how to make investments that created jobs. But no, we didn't get to do that because we didn't have any hearings. It was written in the middle of the night in a dark room someplace way out of our wheelhouse. They said they had to do this because the tax code was too big. And I agree with them. I think it is too big. I think it does need to be reformed. But the fact of the matter is, and the joint tax testified on this, if their bill is passed and signed into law, it won't do away with a single chapter of the tax code, but instead it will add one more to it. So this is literally making the tax code bigger. And I want to know who those American families are who some of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle claim will be helped from this. Because this is what I see in reading this and reading the analysis from different experts. If someone in your family has Alzheimer's, you'll pay more because they're going to take away the medical expense deduction that you now can take advantage of. Low-income folks with kids, you're going to pay more when you're excluded from the child tax credit. If you're a teacher dedicated to your students and to their well-being, and you take money out of your own pocket to buy pencils, supplies, and things for your classroom, today you get a deduction for that because we know how important education is. But under this bill, you'll pay more because they're taking that deduction away too. We just heard from a veteran on the other side who said how great this is for veterans. Well, let me tell you, if you're a veteran and you get your duty station reassigned and you have to go someplace else, and the house you have to sell in your first duty station, if you haven't lived in it for 8 years, you're going to be taxed on any profit from that. So if you're a veteran and you get transferred, you're not going to benefit from this. You're going to lose. Do you have a student loan? And we all know how expensive those are these days. Well, if you do, you're going to pay more because they're taking away your ability to deduct the interest payment on your student loan. Do you own a home? Well, if you do, you'll pay more when they limit the mortgage deduction, mortgage interest deduction. And by the way, as we heard in committee during the markup on this bill, this could actually decrease the value of your home by 10%. Now, tell me how that helps working class, middle class families to say all that money that you've been saving by buying your home, we're going to take 10% away from the value of that. That certainly doesn't create a big win for American families. Are you in the middle class, that big win for American families, those middle class of families? Because the analysis says that 36 million middle class families are going to see a tax hike in this bill. Do you deduct your state and local taxes? Well, if you do, you're going to pay more because you're going to lose that deduction too. Do you care about infrastructure investments in your community? I had a visit yesterday from the head of the San Francisco airport. He came in because of this bill. I don't represent San Francisco, but he came in to see me because I'm a member of this committee and he knew we were going to be taking this bill up. And they have a tremendous amount of infrastructure investment pending. They do it with the bonds that will be disallowed under this bill. The similar type of action that they're going to do in regard to low-income housing. You know, in my state, we need housing badly. And we're able to build low-income housing by using those bonds that are made available in our tax code. That goes away. That hurts homes. That hurts people who want to move into homes. And I'll tell you, in my district, it's a particularly raw subject right now because in one of my counties, Sonoma County, we had a 2% vacancy rate in residential housing about a month ago. And about a month ago now, we had the worst fire in California history. In Sonoma County, it wiped out 5% of the residential housing stock. There were about 9,000 homes total in the fire that were destroyed. Homes in Sonoma, homes in Napa, homes in Lake, homes in Mendocino, homes in Butte, homes down in Southern California. And that just further deteriorated the housing shortage problem that we face. And so to take away ability to construct new low-income housing hurts. But you know, I think what hurt even more is in this bill, they took away the ability for individuals and families, those middle-class families that they're talking about helping, they took away their ability to write off their losses due to a disaster. And that's, I would be happy to yield. Well, I don't know how they did that. I don't know why they do that.
Why would they do that? In the face of these fires, in the face of so many in California understanding that impact, why is it that they did this?
Well, I wish I could say that's the $64 million question, but sadly it's going to cost taxpayers a lot more than $64 million when they're all said and done. It's a mystery to me, and I asked the chairman who wrote the bill during the committee markup why he would do that, and he had no response. He said, well, we're going to fix it, we're going to make it better.
Were there any hearings?
There were no hearings.
So there's been no hearings.
No hearings, and they didn't fix it.
They didn't fix it, and yet here we are on the verge of voting on a bill that will impact 100% of the economy and 100% of the tax code. No hearings?
No hearings.
Mr. Neal, you suggested in the process at the outset that this was a missed opportunity. And then you went back and gave a historic tutorial on how we got here. How is it that we got here and arrived here with no public hearings and no expert testimony?
The summary of this tax bill was published last Thursday. We did a walkthrough on Monday. We only had a chance to respond to the bill or the chairman's mark on Friday. And then on Monday we did a walkthrough. Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday morning we did the markup. Not one hearing. And recall that in the last moments of the markup we were handed a manager's amendment. We had 20 minutes to react to the manager's amendment. So no hearings. And compare that with 1986, which everybody heralds now as a great moment of Reagan and O'Neill and Rostenkowski and Gephardt and Bradley. 450 witnesses, 30 public hearings. The Secretary of the Treasury sat through the markup.
In your history of serving on this committee, and we're joined by Mr. Levin and Mr. Kind and Mr. Welsh, and Mr. Levin, I have to ask you this too. In your serving on this committee, has there ever been a bill of this magnitude or proportion that has been brought out without a public hearing, without expert witnesses? Mr. Thompson had a raging fire in his district that you heard him from his own lips what it did and how it devastated Sonoma and Napa Valley, and no hearings. Is there a precedent for this?
I don't think so. Mr. Neal has spelled out, and you have, the atrocious approach here. So I think we can sum it up. The process has been terrible. The product is worse. And that's why what happens when you have a very terrible process, you get a frightfully bad product.
Mr. Kind has stood up before earlier and talked about the fact that the other side, who claimed to be deficit hawks, all of a sudden, they're an endangered species. I don't know if the gentleman from Wisconsin wants to expand upon that and further ask the gentleman from California, and I yield to him.
Well, let me, reclaiming my time, let me just state and thank you for drawing attention to the terrible fires that did so much damage in my home state, and the fact that they took the deduction for these types of disasters away from the American people. But I don't want anybody to think it's just about fires, nor is it just about my state. They took away this provision in the tax code for anybody who has a disaster from now on. If it's a mudslide, an earthquake, a fire, any disaster, you will not be able to claim that deduction. And to add insult to injury, the chairman grandfathered in the hurricane victims in his own district. And I'll just say one more thing and I'll yield back my time. If this isn't all bad enough, everybody should know that all of these costs that we've talked about are bad enough. But there's one cost in here that is crippling, and it's crippling to our children and our grandchildren. And that's the fact that this bill is not paid for, and it adds $2.3 trillion. 2.3 trillion, that's trillion with a T, to our national debt. And that's going to be passed right along to our children, right along to our grandchildren, and that's going to hurt us in the years to come.
The gentleman, could I ask just for the gentleman to clarify something? You said earlier that you came down here, and you rarely come down here. This is a special order. The reason that you're here, the reason that Mr. Davis is here, Mr. Welsh, Mr. Levin, the reason that Mr. Neal, Mr. Kine, and myself are all here is because we haven't had the opportunity to have a hearing and have expert witnesses. Have you had any expert witness?
There's been no hearings on this bill. There have been no expert witnesses. The only help that we've gotten are from the outside organizations and the universities that crunch these numbers to be able to give us some glimpse of what's going to happen, and the benefit of some analysis from the joint tax staff. But there have been no hearings, there have been no experts, nobody from our district who lives and breathes this, no one from our districts who are going to be impacted by this. This was done from the top down and crammed through in the most bastardized system that I've ever seen in my years here, and I yield to Mr. Kine.
Well, I think my good friend and colleague from California is raising a very important point, and it's a point that all of us here this evening on the Ways and Means Committee with the leadership of Mr. Neal from Massachusetts have been raising for some time. Doing tax reform right is tough. There are a lot of moving pieces to it, and there are a lot of traps and unintended consequences if you do it the wrong way. And not having one hearing, not having proper vetting, not taking the time to listen to people back home in our respective states and districts about the consequences of something that's going to affect every American life in this country is legislative malpractice. And that's what we're on the verge of committing leading up to tomorrow's vote. My friend from California mentioned the $2.3 trillion in additional debt over the next 10 years by the time you add in the interest payments and how devastating that will be. And it's happening at the wrong time. I mean, we might have gotten away with that with the 1981 tax cuts that weren't paid for back then because there was a little bit of time to recover from a big fiscal mistake. And from 2001, 2003, we've run out of time as a nation with 70 million baby boomers beginning their massive retirement, 10,000 a day, joining Social Security and Medicare. But their entire theory is premised on the fact that over 2/3 of the tax cut will be going to large corporations under their bill, of this illusory growth that's going to come from it. And part of that is based on this tax holiday. They call it deemed repatriation, where these multinational companies are going to be able to bring dollars back into America at a much lower rate and supposedly reinvesting here that's going to promote growth. But there was a recent survey by Bank of America and Merrill Lynch of the 300 of executives of some of the largest U.S. multinational companies, asking them what they would do with this deemed repatriated money coming back to the country. Their number one response was paying down debt. reinvesting in their company, reinvesting in research and development, investing in more jobs and good paying jobs, barely registered in that survey. But this should not come as a surprise. It's not like we haven't been down this road before. We tried a repatriation bill back in the early 2000s where these companies were able to bring back a ton of money, and what they used it for was dividend